Hi everybody, welcome to the first F.O.W Wisdom Podcast. So in this little episode, I'm going to talk about where the introduction to what this podcast, the purpose of this podcast is. So about a year ago, I came up with an idea of F.O.W Wisdom, and I wanted to do it in a blog form, but I felt that I was constricted in a way in that I had to, gain traffic. I had to force myself to, write these catchy article titles and things like that. And that's pretty much what I started to do. And I did not like the way that the direction the blog was heading. So I decided to make it into a podcast form. And let alone, I really suck at writing. So my grammar was terrible. So, people who are listening who know me understands what I'm talking about. So English was not my first language, so I really had a hard time in English. But in this introduction, I want to tell you where I got the idea from and where the influence came. So I got this idea of F.O.W Wisdom from Alan Watts. So in one of his lectures, he brilliantly pointed out the difference between the far out and the far in individual. So I'm going to read a little part of that lecture. And he said, there are those classes of people. There are the very far out people and the very far in people. Now, ordinarily, we say someone is very far out when there are oddballs, when they're exceedingly unconventional. But I want you to turn the picture around and look as a conventional person. Look at a square as a person who's far out. That is to say, he is so involved in the seriousness of the game he is playing that he is lost. He doesn't know where he started from, and he thinks he's there. That he's completely lost because he's actually under the cover of his assurance, his status, of his position in society. He's really a very anxious person. I said a lot yesterday about the way in which our society shows anxiety because it cannot permit the existence of people who don't belong. And it cannot really permit the criticism of laughter. It cannot permit the presence of the old-fashioned court jester. Because these people are so far out. They're so involved and watch from a certain standpoint, you see. From the Joker's standpoint. He doesn't condemn such people. He rather congratulates them on their heroism for getting so lost and so involved that to keep the far out people from going quite insane, there have to be far in people, and the far in people are those who keep contact with the original going behind the scene. So, from my understanding, what Alan Watts was trying to say is that far out people. So I'm gonna show you guys the definition of somebody who is far out. So, according to Oxford, far out is pretty much an adjective describing somebody who's unconventional, unorthodox, unusual, nonconformist, individual. So people who don't fit in. And just like Alan Watts was saying that it's kind of necessary for society, for the universe to operate. So we need two types of people, the people who are far out and the people who are far in. And if you are that type of person, if you feel like you're an oddball or you don't conform to society's society's standards of an individual, then you are perfect for this podcast and listening to the things that we're going to talk about in the future. And so then I'm going to share with you guys the definition of wisdom. So the quality of having experience, knowledge, and good judgment, the quality of being wise. So it talks about being intelligent, understanding, insight. And there's a difference between things that you learn in institutions and things you learn from experience. And that's where wisdom comes from. And far out wisdom is a way to describe individuals who have unorthodox wisdom to share with society. Because to me, I never really understood why people just kind of reject certain type of people from the world. And how I see the world, every little human beings that I come across in my everyday life, from the person driving next to you, from the person walking the streets, from your people from your past lives, to the people that you're going to meet in the future. There's always wisdom shared everywhere. And that's the thing that I love about humanity, is the things that we can learn from one another. And we are so afraid to talk about things that scares us, that it requires far out individuals like me, like you who is listening, to talk about these things, to bring about the wisdom in things such as death, and talk about pain and suffering from the world, because we know that far out people see that, whereas far out individuals, they kind of conceal themselves from that. Just like Alan Watts said in the beginning that I read, in the little lecture that I read to you guys, is that far in people, we need them to operate so far out people can kind of dissect them a little bit. It's not like a science experiment, and we don't pity far in people. It's the fact that we need you guys to understand humanity. And so this podcast is for people who they just want to talk about philosophy and try to understand why we act the way that we do. So I really want to introduce to you guys that who I am. So my name is Boon Him. I am a person or individual who's located in California. I've been having these questions about existence for quite some time. And it all started when I was about 11 years old. I knew I was different from everybody else because I never really understood why people don't have the same questions like I did, And around 15 years old, I first saw my first death. There was a really bad accident that happened in a very busy intersection where I lived, and there was unfortunately there was a death of a little girl who got hit by a car. And I remember seeing her body, and it kind of threw me in a existential crisis. And I remember everything so vividly. I knew that, and I remember going home, and after seeing that happen, that why do people hurt? And I remember asking myself, if there was a God, why does he allow things like this to happen? So that started my philosophical journey, and I started to answer questions, what is happiness? What is purpose? Why do people get sad? Why do the universe operates the way that it does? And so I've taught myself philosophy about, I think I was 17 years old, and then I came across Friedrich Nietzsche. If any of you guys who are listening understand that reading Nietzsche, you have to, I'm going to be very honest, you have to kind of prepare yourself in a way. And I made that mistake, and I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't read Nietzsche, but what I'm saying is that you kind of have to work your way to the basics, to the beginning, to the to the root of philosophy and where it came from, to kind of understand Friedrich Nietzsche. It's more like an advanced stage and advanced philosophy. And I kid you not, guys, I had a mental breakdown, and I'm not really joking. I don't remember the book exactly, but I remember it was one Nietzsche's book, and I came across it when I was in a bookstore because I was searching for answers, and I was like, I'm going to go to the bookstore and I'm going to find that answer. And I came across Nietzsche's book, and I just opened it. Of course, every Nietzsche's book, there's his scruffled beard and things like that. I go, who is this person? And I remember just coming across this passage and it says, God is dead. And I just kind of like, I kind of freaked out. And so I just picked up Aristotle's book and on ethics, and I just went from there. But I never really thought about what Nietzsche was trying to say. And as I got older and I taught myself philosophy for about a decade now, I think about 13 years now, that I understood what Nietzsche was trying to say. And of course, there's different branches of philosophy and things like that. But this entire podcast is for us to kind of challenge our own wisdom. So to me, in my personal opinion, philosophy is made for us to challenge ourselves as individuals, so we could reach that state of enlightenment. Because in me, I have this equation on my desk, and it says knowledge plus philosophy equals enlightenment. So that's pretty much what I have on my desk at the moment. And I just like, everything that we learn is all things that we learn from experience. And I'm not talking about I'm not an empiricist. I'm not suggesting that her experience is a fact per se, but what I'm saying is that our experiences and our sufferings and things like that is just a bunch of gold mines within ourselves and our consciousness of wisdom. And so I'm so fascinated talking with everybody. You learn so much if you just talk to people. And that's pretty much the purpose of the podcast. And I hope that you guys come along with me in the process, because I'm learning just like you are. 13 years of philosophy under my belt, and I still can't understand how the world works. So humanity is very difficult to understand, but at the same time, trying to understand humanity, it's also beautiful at the same time. So, and I hope that you guys come along with me. It's new, so let's get to know each other, and let's talk about philosophy. Let's share some wisdom, and like always, let's mindfuck each other. So, and like I said, I have a sense of humor. So it's my way of coping. It's my way of teaching. So, having a sense of humor is a blessing for me, I guess, so to speak, because the fact that I'm able to teach that, and having a sense of humor makes you very open and down to earth. So a lot of people will be, attracted to individuals like that. So there's going to be a lot of cussing. I promise I keep it to a minimal. So that's why I have there's a warning, because I'm going to get deep down and dirty. So yeah, like I said, let's fuck each other. Let's have a mygasm. And like always, far out, man.